So the heavily anticipated rematch is just about to happen. The Springboks taking on the All Blacks in Cape Town. They versed each other in Johannesburg last week. It was a last-minute thriller. This game will be no different. And in this preview, we'll be looking through at the lineups, the key players, few stats about these two sides going head-to-head. There's some interesting ones when it comes to Cape Town. And then at the end, a prediction who we think will win this match. But starting with the Springboks lineup. They were announced just a little bit after New Zealand, but they have gone with a strong side with quite a few changes compared to what we saw in last week's fixture. Oxnashare, Bongio Manambi and Frans Malherbe, though, they will keep their spots in that front row, both sides going with unchanged when it comes to the props and the hooker. I do think that's a smart move on both sides' part. The scrums were relatively even. If anything, you'd say the Springboks had a bit of an advantage, so you don't really want to break that up. Even though you've got young players who could come into the starting lineup, I think the matches up against the Pumas is where we will see the Boks have a bit of rotation. Number 4, this is where we do see Eben Etzebeth back in the starting lineup. He did come off the bench last week due to a little bit of an injury concern, but that was cleared up pretty quickly, and he is back. And at the starting side now, he will take Peter Steph de Toy's spot, who moves into the number 7 jersey for Ben. Jason Dixon, Ruan Nokia, he keeps his spot at number 5. I mentioned it in the lineups video. He had a pretty underrated game. Solid enough when it came to lineouts. Also was dealing with the HIA situation, how he had to go off the field, then make his way back on, and he still continued to play extremely well. So I'm looking forward to seeing him again. Number 6, a man who not many people anticipated actually seeing, and one of the rumours was that Rassi actually delayed his announcement so that he could see if this man was going to be match fit. And that is the captain, Siya Kolisi. I didn't expect to see his name down in the lineups after how that man's face looked in the post-press conference of the last contest. He looked battered. He looked bruised. I think he's going to need surgery, possibly after this game, but he's decided instead, first, he wants to secure the Rugby Championship and the Freedom Cup, and then after that, he will recover. Number 7, Peter Steph de Toy. He's been sensational throughout this Rugby Championship. Whether you put him at 4, 5, 7, wherever he is, he has an impact. And I have a feeling that because of the way that the Springboks have got their bench set up, only having the 5-3, means that Peter Steph de Toy, more than likely, if they do need a replacement in that loose forward trio or in the locks, he will move into that locking duo, possibly partnering with Eben Etzebeth. That is an insane combination to have later on. In the contest, number 8, Jasper Wiese, solid player last week. First game back since his suspension, looked like he hadn't taken that time off, was back rearing to go. Although a good impact from Elric Lowe also off the bench for the Springboks means that those two could be jockeying for that number 8 jersey as the Rugby Championship does wear on. But in the 9-10 combination, this is where we see two changes for the Springboks. Grant Williams at number 9 with Andre Pollard slotting in as the 10 last week. It was Sasha Feinberg Ngome Zulu alongside Kobus Reinach. Now Sasha gets a spot off the bench. Reinach does not. He is nowhere to be seen. Instead, Jaden Hendrickse will get his first opportunity there. Andre Pollard, he's got a great history in terms of games up against New Zealand. Always consistent off the kicking tee, which is exactly what they'll be using him for in this contest, partnered with that pure pace of Grant Williams. It's going to be electrifying, and the big question is, will Pollard be able to play at that same pace that we've seen Sasha Feinberg Ngome Zulu playing at? It was almost an alliteration there with the amount of P's in that sentence, but Pollard needs to be precise. There's too many P's again. But Andre, he needs a good game here because there's a young 10 who's trying to take his spot, and I'm not talking about Mani Libok. He keeps getting released to play for Western Province. Talking about Sasha Feinberg Ngome Zulu. But moving on to the rest of the backs, number 11, this is where they have gone with Cheslin Colby. Now last week it was Kurtley Arendse, unfortunately did suffer that head knock, which took him out of this contest. Makazole Mapimpi, it was said that maybe he would move into that number 11 jersey, but it was confirmed earlier on in the week that he was awaiting for the birth of a baby. I should specify it is his baby, not just a random one that he's awaiting the arrival of. So he is away, but he is actually going to be playing for the Sharks in the Currie Cup. So hopefully goes all right there. Damien Dealende and Jesse Creel in the midfield. That is dangerous. Once again last week, we saw the ability of those two. Jesse Creel as harsh as it sounds, he had a little bit of a quieter game than we are used to seeing. He had 5 tackles made, he had 3 missed, he had a few running meters, but I think Damian Dialende, he kind of stole the show in that midfield combination because of his work over the ball, getting those turnovers, and he was absolutely clinical when given that opportunity. Number 14, Kane Moody, moves into the starting side due to that injury, means that Colby does transfer to the left, and Kane Moody does get the right. And then at number 15, this is where the Springboks have got Willie LaRue. So taking out Upper Lelefasi, it won't be the last time we see that man in the Rugby Championship. I'm sure a chance up against the Pumas is just around the corner. But moving on to New Zealand's starting lineup, in the front row it is Tamaiti Williams alongside Cody Taylor and Tyrell Lomax. Tamaiti Williams, I mentioned about it in the lineups video as well. He needs a big game here. Franz Malherbe is such a hard man to scrummage against, and Tamaiti Williams has the reputation as a man mountain. The two men weigh the same. Yes, Tamaiti's a little bit taller, but I would say that Franz Malherbe, with that little bit more experience, is definitely the grittier, grindier player out of the two in the front row. So Tamaiti Williams, he needs a big one here if he does want to help the ABs. Tyrell Lomax, he did have a big game last week. It cannot be denied the work rate of that man. He managed to get a nice pass in that Caleb Clark try, but also those 14 tackles, like I said, making the third most, I believe it was, for the All Blacks. Everyone talked about how busy Ethan Blackadder was in that first game. Tyrell Lomax made more tackles than Ethan Blackadder in the locking duo. No changes here for the All Blacks. Scott Barrett at number 4, the captain at number 5, Tupavai. I mentioned about Damian Dialende. Yes, he got a lot of turnovers, but Tupavai, he got just the one, and it was an important one for the All Blacks. They'll want to build on that. And at this contest, in the loose forward trio, this is where we see a massive switch. Now, it has been said that it's due to an injury. Ethan Blackadder has got some sort of injury, which is extremely surprising. I don't think that man's ever been injured in his career. But it brings in an opportunity for Wallace Satiti. In some people's opinion, probably the 4th option, if not the 5th, that people would think of for that number 6 jersey. Ethan Blackadder was first. Then you'd probably go Jacobson or Finau, just because they have been playing blindside. Then at a stretch, you could say Papali'i. And then Wallace Satiti played a majority of his Super Rugby season as the 8, is now playing the blindside flanker role. It's a massive opportunity because with Savia at number 8, you really struggle to get minutes as a young player. Satiti's got pace, he's got aggression, and he's got physicality, which is exactly what New Zealand need in this second matchup up against the Springboks. Sam Cane keeps his spot at number 7. He did get quite a bit of stick from that first game, and not just because of that Sia Khaleesi tackle, but more so because people just don't like him. But he made 17 tackles. He made the most out of any All Black. Even if you don't like him, he's still got a good work rate, which is what New Zealand need here. And then Ardie Savia at number 8. That man's hands were like butter in the first match. But even with those buttery fingers, he still had a big impact for the All Blacks in match number 1. Now we move on to the 9-10 combination. Kote Zaratama finds himself as the starting 9. TJ Perenara, he started last week. He did a lot out there on the field and not just running his mouth. He also had some very strong kicks for the All Blacks. But he is now off the bench, going with more experience here for the ABs, as later on in the contest, that's where the Springboks did start to dominate. So Kote Zaratama, he gets the start and he partners with his Chiefs teammate in Damian McKenzie. Him and Sasha Feinberg Ngomezulu at the moment are the 2 leading point scorers in the Rugby Championship. Now, with McKenzie starting this game, that gives him a bit of an advantage to try and get a few extra points on top of Sasha. Sasha Feinberg Ngomezulu, he will be coming off the bench a little bit later on in the game as a part of the Springboks 5-3 split. So he will get a chance to get some points of his own. Mark Talia, he is out on the left wing. Some people surprised with the fact that Caleb Clark wasn't there after scoring 2 tries last week, but I can confirm, unfortunately, he caught the Ethan Blackadder bug and he is sadly injured for this contest. Geordie Barrett and Rieko Ioane, they will be the midfield combination. Barrett last week, he'll feel more confident after that last game because in the World Cup final, he just felt like he couldn't do anything without a big South African boy just smashing straight into the front of him. Whereas this last game, They did try and target him a little bit, but I feel like he held his own a lot better in that last game. Rieko Ioane having a lot of post-contact meters, his pace, if he can find a gap in the Springboks defence, and it really happens because of how strong their defence has been, Rieko Ioane could be dangerous in this game. Little bit of X factor could be just around the corner for that man Rieko if he can find a way around Jesse Kriel. Number 14, this is where we see Severis added back in. Now this will be his first contest for the All Blacks since that loss to Argentina. He was, to say it lightly, he was awful out on that left wing. Mateo Carreras was making him look ordinary, but he needs to step up here because he's going head to head with Cheslin Kolbe, and we talked about Carreras' step. Kolbe's got one on him too, so Severis defensively will want to be on his A game. And then number 15 for the All Blacks, this is where we see Will Jordan get the chance. He's got a clinical try-scoring record, although the last start that he had at 15, he did not score a try for the All Blacks, but he has to get a couple tries here or else he's not at his 100% strike rate anymore, which I'm sure even if he says he's not keeping an eye on, maybe there's just a little bit in the back of Will Jordan's mind saying he needs to cross the try line multiple times for this contest. Now, I did mention it just before, but the Springboks, they did go with the 5-3 split off their bench. The All Blacks, they have done the same, so the 3 replacement backs for the Springboks this week compared to the 2 of last week, but they are Jaden Hendrickse, Sasha Feinberg, Ngome Zulu, as well as Lukan Yoam, who's had some brilliant games up against the All Blacks. I don't really see this game being any different for the All Blacks. They have also got that 5-3 that brings TJ Perenara, Anton Leonard-Brown, and also the experience of Beauden Barrett off the bench. We know what kind of impact that man had in the second test match up against the English. Actually, one of the main reasons, if not the reason, that the All Blacks were able to win that match. So they're going to need his experience off the bench. I believe that's what the All Blacks more so have gone for in this matchup. They've also got the return of Luke Jacobson as the number 20. Very versatile player, can play in all 3 positions for the All Blacks. But now we better mention him because we always do. Kwagga Smith. He is off the bench again for the Springboks, number 19 in this contest. Because of, like I mentioned, Pieter-Steph du Toit's versatility, does mean that they can afford to go with 2 loose forwards, and worst comes to worst, someone can jump into that locking duo. But he scored a try last week, Kwagga, which honestly is so heavily deserved. After the impact that he brings time and time again off the Springboks bench, it was about time that he reaped the rewards. Maybe he can get himself another one here for this Cape Town match. But those are the starting lineups and a little quick look at the reserves. But key players, I think the problem that we've got here is there's too many key important players in this contest. For the Springboks, you could look through at that whole back line. The fact that they've only got 3 players who were there last week, chances for Willie LaRue, chances for Pollard. There's a lot of pressure on those 2 because they are the experienced heads that should be able to perform at the top level even if they didn't play the week prior. And this kind of contest, it's going to be a big chance for them because Willie LaRue, he's got a lot of pressure on his spot at the moment. He's got Apalele Fasi breathing down his neck. He's got Damian Valimza returning from injury soon, who will want that 15 jersey back ASAP. Then in the 10 jersey, you've got Andre Pollard, who is known as being safe as houses, whereas the youngster, the X Factor, Sasha Feinberg Ngome Zulu, he is the hot topic at the moment for the Springboks fly half. And like I said earlier on, Manie Libbok, people are only really putting him in the starting lineup as a technicality because they feel like it's about time we see Libbok at international level again. So I do hope he gets some chances. It's just going to be very tricky to get those starting minutes or even off the bench for Manie Libbok unless Pollard has a shocker here. That is the only way I really see Manie Libbok getting huge minutes up against Argentina. There is also a chance, though, that Sasha Feinberg Ngome Zulu, they may look to use him lightly up against Argentina just to give Libbok a few more minutes, work out who their 2 10s will be for the November internationals. In terms of that fullback, I mean, you've got the experience of Etzebeth alongside Pieter-Steph du Toit, Sia Khaleesi. I think it's going to be interesting to see how he approaches this game, seeing as he did get that facial injury last week. He won't want to irritate it too much, but at the end of the day, I think that even him playing in this game shows how tough he is and how much he cares about the Springboks side and the Freedom Cup as well. But looking through at New Zealand for their key players, I think anyone who's been added into the starting lineup has a massive role to play here, whether that is Mark Talia, whether that is Sevu Reece, Cortez Aratama, or Wallace Satiti. Those 4 men, this is your opportunity to prove yourself up against the number 1 side in the world. But if they can prove it up against the number 1 side, that number 1 side then drops to number 2 in the world, and Ireland actually become number 1 in the world rankings, which is quite incredible how quickly it can change. And I mentioned about it on a little bit of an earlier live stream about how it does heavily favour the side that are ranked a little bit lower because you can gain massive ground. I believe if the Springboks win this game, they can get a maximum of like 0.35, whereas New Zealand, if they win this game, I think they can go up by about 2. So that is pretty substantial in terms of when you're dealing with only very small decimal points at the top of the world rankings. But New Zealand, those young players, they do need to step up. But I mentioned about how I had a few facts about this contest, and one of which is New Zealand have a pretty decent record at Cape Town Stadium. They have won their last 2 contests there, but they have never won 3 in a row in Cape Town. So this would make history for the All Blacks if they were able to get the victory, but there is plenty of history that can be made for the Springboks as well if they win this game. That would make it 4 in a row up against New Zealand, which would be the longest winning streak of the professional era. A lot of you corrected me, said that it wasn't the longest winning streak ever. That happened way back in 1937 to 1949, but of the professional era, it would be the longest winning streak ever. Wait, I shouldn't say ever. It would be the longest winning streak up against the All Blacks. So a massive opportunity here for South Africa to make a little bit of history of their own. No matter what happens in this game, one of these 2 sides theoretically is increasing their winning streak in some regard. New Zealand and Cape Town, Springboks in the overall winning streak. But also, another stat to mention would be that the Freedom Cup, if South Africa win this contest, or even if they draw, I believe it would be staying in South Africa for the first time in around 15 years. A massive achievement could be on the cards for this Boks team, and they'd also be very close to securing the Rugby Championship, and unless something really, really drastic went wrong up against Argentina, they should be the Rugby Championship winners. But now we are up to that stage of a prediction to decide whether or not I think that will happen. Now, in terms of the starting lineups, New Zealand have gone, I believe, a little bit more risky. And that can sometimes be a good thing, but at the same time, I have no idea how this New Zealand side's going to play. Because Cortez Aratama at 9, we've seen him play up against the Fijians, and he was strong in the starting lineup, but there is a big difference between playing Fiji and playing the Springboks. Later on in the contest last week, they were looking to pressure him. They charged down a kick. They forced an error. He gave away a penalty. Is that the type of thing that we could see early on in this matchup? They've also got Wallace Satiti in the starting lineup. He wasn't so strong off the bench in the last game we saw him in up against Argentina. But all throughout Super Rugby Pacific, in the games that mattered the most for the Chiefs, that was when we saw Wallace Satiti really step up and play his best performances. Even in games that they lost, he was still one of the stars for the Chiefs side. Springboks, they've got those experienced heads. Etzebeth, Pollard, Peter Steph-Tatoi, Vili LaRue, Colby's out on the wing. It's going to be an absolutely awesome game. I feel like a similar score to last week could be on the cards. The Springboks winning that game. I do see this one being less than 7 splitting them. And I always get too specific with my scores because I give you the exact number that I think we're going to get, and then I get it wrong, but I get close with the margin. Last week I said, theoretically, that the Springboks would win by 2, and they did win by 4. So I have no idea what that means in terms of my prediction this week, but I am going to say that even though New Zealand, I think that they'll really want to get it right here, I just see the Springboks maybe being that little bit too strong. It's just that bench, although they haven't got the 6-2 split this time, but Quagga Smith changes a game when he makes his way onto the field. I'm going to go the Springboks to win this game in Cape Town get themselves that 4-match winning streak. And I will say that the end score is 29 points to 26. Close game yet again. It normally is between these two sides. I am going to say the Springboks win it. They also secure that Rugby Championship title. But nonetheless, I do thank you all very much for tuning into this preview. We will be doing the live commentary on the channel. Game kicking off at 3 a.m. New Zealand time on Sunday morning. Or that is 5 p.m. kickoff for you guys in South Africa. We're going to have a 90-minute build-up where we go through all the extra stats that we didn't mention in this preview, as well as a whole heap of other information, getting you ready for the kickoff of this second matchup between these two sides. But if you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all for the next one.